Today is a continuation of a series of This I Believe. We ripped that title off from NPR, but it's a good one. We did this once before, maybe 10 years ago, where we had a series of people explain to the congregation what they believe, whether it be about the big questions, where do I go after I die, where did I come from, or perhaps it is a story of your religious journey, or perhaps it is how you live your life, or how you live your religion in your life. Today we're going to hear from Melissa Alden and Robin Wormser, and Alyssa will go first.
Have to have room for my copious notes.
I did say 7 minutes.
Yeah, you did. That's what you said, but who's got the mic? That's all I want to say. How many of you remember the classic movie from probably made in the late 1950s called The Nun Story with Audrey Hepburn? Well, it certainly impacted my young life. And it was the story of a young, angelic, deeply religious girl who found her way through her devotion to God and becoming a nun. Well, I too have my own nun story. I'll be right back. Yes, it is a half slip. This is how it started for me, for young Alyssa at age 9 or 10. Brought up in a sort of Methodist household in Detroit in the late 1950s and early 1960s. Not particularly devout parents. They were more devoted to sleeping in on Sunday morning, but not me. Oh no. I was devoted and completely enamored with God, Jesus, all of it. But also, and this may be a surprise to some of you, but with drama. Yeah, and the church, the Methodist church, did not offer a lot of drama. So where did I go? I actually still went to the Methodist church alone, but I decided to be a Catholic and, most importantly, a nun. And it appealed to every fiber of my crazy little world of hyperbole. I loved the fact that at that time, all the services were done in Latin, so you couldn't understand anything. I loved the scary icons, confession, all the rules, no meat on Friday, which I practiced, rosaries. The one I really liked was the ash on the head at Ash Wednesday. But best of all, I loved the nuns. Women who were so committed to God, married to God. I drove my parents absolutely nuts with this, critiquing all of their mannerisms, walking around with hands in prayer mode. You'll be happy to know I did not do that at school, although I really wanted to. But I loved to, when I got home, I was always like this. And I usually wore my half slip on my hat. And I loved singing chants in Latin. Of course, I just made the words up, but I just loved that. And I was a real treat. I even genuflected when I entered the Methodist Church. And it's true. When I played dress up with my little friends in the basement with my mom's old gowns, everyone chose their clothes, and then we chose a persona to be in this play world, and all my friends would go, I want to be an actress, and somebody'd say, I want to be a nurse, and I would say, I want to be Catholic. And I was quite a piece of work, as you can imagine. Well, this went on for the better part of a year, I bet. And then I mellowed and went into my Oral Roberts phase, which is a whole other story, but I used to love to sit by the television and put my hands on there and pray for the people that couldn't walk. And that was terrific. But you know, through all of that, and something that has stayed is a deep belief in the metaphysical world and in God. Still believe that. By the time I was a teenager, I had become a little more mainstream in my beliefs. But during college, I wandered further from that. Like Mike Timms was mentioning a few weeks ago, I got very, very involved in the civil rights movement and in marching on Washington and righting the world of war and so on. And I gradually, and this is over a long time, I just moved away from organized religion altogether, but with the core of spirituality in me always intact. I questioned traditional Christian theology and rejected the idea of, and I still do, that all things happen for a reason. As my friends know, that's a particular philosophy that makes me crazy. I used to have people tell me when I was looking for a new house that they would pray for me that I found a new house. And I would say thank you, but really, I mean, you think about all the things that need to be prayed for in the world. I didn't think that was probably real high on the list, but now I still hold my spiritual side very close, but I feel my attitude about God is that God is sort of laissez-faire. We're here, we come down the chute, and we sometimes, and there are many of us that have more abilities, and nothing is equal. I don't think that. I think that a lot of things don't seem fair. I don't think that, in my opinion, I don't think God cares if it's fair or not. I don't pray that for things to change. I try to, like many of you, make them change if I possibly can, but I don't sit around like John Mayer says and wait for the world to change. I don't think so. I think we create our own destiny, I guess you might say, without divine intervention, and many times circumstances certainly are thrust upon us which cause those things to vacillate. The corruption and the greed in the Catholic Church absolutely abhors me. Of course, now, even with more recent and further evidence of rampant and excused child molestation, I even find it sometimes hard to find amusement in my childhood obsession with the whole thing. As the years passed in my life, I found myself seeking spiritual camaraderie once again. This is as I got older, and I couldn't reconcile going back into a traditional church. So I did some little research, and I thought, hey, maybe the Unitarian church might be a place for me. And I was all set to go to the one in Ann Arbor, and way back when they had the Shakespeare Festival outside, I ran into one of my former students who was going to this church here, and I don't know how it came up, but I told her I was going to go to Ann Arbor the next day, and she said, hey, we've got a Unitarian Universalist church here in Jackson County. Didn't know it, never. I think I'd driven by here a lot, but I didn't pay attention to it. Well, I decided, well, let's give that a whirl. And I came in, and Grace, I sat next to you and your sister, Jean. And they were so nice to me. Everybody was wonderful. And I was so thrilled that I seemed to fit in a way, because everyone was questioning and seeking, and that's where I was. And that was, Ann and I figured out this morning, I think 21 years ago, and I'm still here. And this church and all of you have so enriched my life. I can't even begin to tell you how much it means to me. And I have made some of my most enduring and deep friendships here. And that's a nutshell of my journey to get here.
Well, believe it or not, I had a choice. I could go before Alyssa or after. And I figured it was a lose-lose situation. So I chose after. I was hoping I could learn something from her. And one thing I don't think, Alyssa and I have known each other a very long time. We got involved in the church here at about the same time. And I've known about Alyssa's obsession with Catholicism as a child for a long time, but I don't think she knows that I think it was my sophomore year in high school, obsessing about Joan of Arc, which involved a unitard and a lot of burlap, but I won't go into that right now. When I was a kid, and maybe some of you can relate to this, church was just a place you went to on Sunday morning. Everybody went to church. You got up, you dressed up, you got in the car, and you went. And I didn't question that, and I quite enjoyed it. We started out in a Lutheran church where my early life began in Pennsylvania, and then eventually transferred to a Presbyterian church here in Michigan. And like most kids, I went to Sunday school. I volunteered in the nursery as I got older. I became active in the youth fellowship group. I joined the youth choir, and eventually, as an adolescent, began the required process to become an official member of the church, which would happen at the age of 13. The classes, to me, were just an extension of youth fellowship, where I spent most of the time just yucking it up with my friend Steve, who's still my friend, I'm proud to say. And it was fun and interesting until I read the script for what we had to say during the service, where we would be joining the church. And in that script was a vow. And at that time, well, still, come on, I take vows very seriously. You're making a promise, you better mean it. And that vow said that I had to commit to having a belief in God. And at that moment, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I don't believe in God. I can't do this. Now, you would have thought that with all those years in vacation Bible school, building things out of popsicle sticks and reading Bible stories in Sunday school with the pink and blue skies and all the little children and animals gathered at the feet of, was that Jesus or God? I don't know. I didn't even know then. But I realized there's no way I can make this vow in front of the entire congregation of the church. Either I'll be telling a bald-faced lie, or I got to go fess up. So I went and found Reverend Garner Wynn, a rather stern gentleman. And I was a kind of a shy kid. So I don't know how I mustered up the courage, but took Reverend Wynn aside and told him what my problem was, and much to his credit, he didn't chastise me, he didn't preach, he didn't try to get me to change my mind. He just said, okay, but since we've gone through the entire process of rehearsal, will you still be part of the service? And then when it's time to actually step forward and take the vow, you can just stay in the back of the church. And I hated to pass up an opportunity to be in the spotlight and part of the pageantry and ceremony, so of course I agreed to that. And I ended up looking on while my friends became members of the Presbyterian Church. I still participated after that in all the activities the church had to offer. It was a big part of my social life, actually. And then my parents divorced, and Mom stopped insisting that we get up and go to church, and things changed, and it was the 60s, and there were a couple of diversions, if you know what I mean. So eventually, I didn't attend at all. For years, I guess I thought it was because I thought a label was necessary. I identified as agnostic, and eventually, when that seemed too non-committal and wishy-washy, I toyed with atheism, tried on humanism. That seemed like a pretty good fit. But I fast forward to about what seems like a cajillion years and a few lifetimes later, just trying to be the best mom and teacher I could be while kind of stuck on the wheel, going to school, going home, going to school, going home, and there wasn't a lot to offer in between while I had, I don't know, Alex was 2 or 3 years old at the time, and I just felt like we were adrift and needed something else to connect to and ground us, and a sense of community. So I started searching for something and accidentally stumbled across this UU thing through a friend of mine who was a Cradle UU, and found the closest one. And here, I learned that I was not alone in my beliefs or lack of them. Whether I identified as agnostic, atheist, humanist, or other was not important. The absence of dogma was a relief. The 7 principles just made sense. The words of Susan Smith, who was in the pulpit at that time, often resonated with me, often moved me to tears. The term liberal religion also resonated with me strongly. My first visit here, I think the sign out front said, "Arms are for hugging." I found a haven of people who were, if not like-minded, at least open-minded. And I just kept coming back for more. When I was asked to speak to you by Lynn, I panicked a little bit. My spiritual beliefs are far from clearly defined, but I do have beliefs. I believe in a firm handshake. I believe in good manners. I believe honesty is the best policy. I believe writing is excellent therapy. I believe you should leave things better than you found them. I believe advice is best given when asked for. I believe you should read aloud to children before they ever have to ask, and you shouldn't stop until they beg you to. I believe in comfortable shoes. I believe you are what you eat. I believe hate is a cause for love. I believe in the glory of the firmament. I believe it's the little things. I believe in making do, but I also believe in living large. I believe what comes around goes around, and I believe we are all here to take care of each other. Thank you.